여러분 반갑습니다. I'm Kwon So-hwa and this is K-Culture Dive. Join us in taking a deep dive into the heart of Korean culture, from K-entertainment to AI news, K-culture and photos. And in our K-Culture Issues segment today, we'll talk about the values of Korea's World Heritage. With that, let's dive in. And joining us on today's show is Walter Lee. Walter, happy Monday.
Happy Monday, Soa, and hello to our K-Culture Dive viewers. I'm Walter Lee to co-host and fill you in with some exciting K-entertainment news.
Walter, the 2026 FIFA World Cup has come to an end with Spain winning over Argentina 1-0. So, yeah, I mean, I was up super early to watch the game. What did you think of it?
You know, for a neutral, it was fine. It was, you know, I could be relaxed while watching it. It was enjoyable.
I think, yeah, I agree with you on that. Although I did bet on, I'm not going to mention, but we are not here to report on news, on sports news though, Walter, but K-entertainment news.
Indeed.
There was some big K-pop influence at the finals at the World Cup. So what is it about?
Yes, so the US actually became the first nation to hold a halftime show for the FIFA World Cup final. Now, Madonna kicked off the halftime show, followed by Venezuelan conductor Gustavo Dudamel, who led an orchestral performance of the White Stripes song Seven Nation Army. And then we got to BTS, who then took the stage to sing their popular hit Dynamite. Other artists include Shakira, Coldplay's Chris Martin, Justin Bieber, and also the Muppets. Now, but big props to BTS for finishing actually their Paris leg of the Arirang World Tour, then flying directly to New York to perform at the halftime show with little rest between. Now, even American media praised the boys. Variety said the group's powerful performance of Dynamite elevated the inaugural World Cup halftime show. Rolling Stone noted that BTS managed to deliver a memorable performance despite the little rest they had. And interestingly as well, this is not Jungkook's first World Cup. It's actually his second time performing at the World Cup, as he sang at the opening ceremony of the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar.
You know, it's amazing to see how big Korea's, K-pop influence is growing on such big, major events such as the World Cup. I mean, we also had Lee at the opening of the World Cup.
Indeed.
Right. Speaking of artists who helped bring Korean music to the audience around the world, next up, let's talk about one of the major songs that really helped put K-pop on the map.
Yes, I agree with you there. So yes, let's talk about Psy and his biggest hit to date, I think, obviously, Gangnam Style. The global smash hit, Gangnam Style, has become the first K-pop music video in history to surpass 6 billion views on YouTube. Now, according to his agency P Nation, the music video exceeded the 6 billion view milestone on July 17th, achieving yet another historic feat approximately 14 years after its release. That's amazing. It's already been 14 years since July 2012. Now, when it was released in July 2012, Gangnam Style became a worldwide phenomenon thanks to its addictive melody, obviously iconic horse riding dance, and humorous music video. It was the first video to pass in YouTube history to surpass 1 billion views, and also spent 7 consecutive weeks at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100.
Thank you, Walter, for that.
Yes.
And last but certainly not least, we're going to talk about a Korean movie that I really hoped to see soon. I actually watched it, I think, less than 24 hours ago.
Right.
It's Hope, and I guess I contributed to the news that you're going to report on now.
You definitely did then. So, director Na Hong-jin's Hope has surpassed 2 million moviegoers just 5 days after its release, continuing its record-breaking box office run as this year's fastest-grossing Korean film. That makes it the fastest movie to reach 2 million admissions this year as well, breaking the previous record, which had been set by director Yoon Sang-ho's Colony, which only came out recently as well. Hope also became the fastest film released this year to reach 1 million admissions, achieving the feat in just 3 days. Hope was first unveiled in the competition section of the Cannes Film Festival in May. Since its domestic release on July 15th, the film has maintained overwhelming ticket reservation rates and strong box office momentum, emerging as one of the biggest hits of Korea's summer movie season.
I hope you're going to watch it soon too, Walter.
I look forward to it, yes.
Okay, thanks for the news and stick around.
Will do.
All right, time now to go over to our AI anchor Arang for more on the culture front. Arang.
Thanks, Sua. Here's your AI guide to the latest cultural headlines from Korea. Let's begin with our top story. The 48th session of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee has kicked off in Korea's southern port city of Busan. It marks the first time Korea has hosted the committee since joining the World Heritage Convention in 1988. At the opening ceremony, President Lee Jae-myung, noting the 150th anniversary of independence activist Baekbom Kim Gusbert, pledged to uphold Kim's vision of protecting humanity's shared heritage and advancing global peace through Korea's cultural strengths. On Sunday, Lee met with UNESCO Director General Khalid El-Inani to discuss closer cooperation and toured the K-Heritage House exhibition with First Lady Kim Hye-kyung. Ahead of the opening of the 48th session of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee, more than 80 heritage experts from around the world, including India, Singapore, and Jamaica, visited the UNESCO-listed petroglyphs along the Banguchan Stream in Busan last Friday. Inscribed as a World Heritage Site in 2025, the prehistoric rock carvings offer a rare glimpse into the lives and culture of early inhabitants of the Korean peninsula. The delegates showed keen interest in preservation efforts and discussed with Korea Heritage Service Administrator Hamin about possible solutions to the site's recurring flooding during periods of heavy rain. Culture Minister Chu Hyung has unveiled plans to establish large-scale venues in major cities around the world as hubs for K-culture. Speaking at a policy forum in Jeju on Saturday, Che said the government is pursuing a tentative K-culture center project by securing operating rights to stadium-sized venues in cities including Los Angeles, New York, and Paris. The centers would host performances while offering K-food and K-beauty experiences, along with Korean merchandise and other products. That's all from me. Turning now to a quick look at more K-culture stories making headlines today.
Through a single photo at a time, we take a closer look at culture in Korea. This is K-Culture in Photos. Today's keyword is 문화유산, or cultural heritage. This week, the world's attention is on Korea's southern port city of Busan, which is hosting the 48th session of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee. To celebrate the event, museums across the city are offering special exhibitions. One highlights Busan's wartime heritage, featuring everyday objects from the Korean War, including refugees' clothing, a lamp made from a military can, and detailed miniature models of historical landmarks that tell the story of the city's past. The celebration also extends beyond the museum. Special commemorative goods, collectible stamps featuring Korea's UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and even commemorative coins have been released, giving visitors unique ways to remember the occasion. Hold on, am I looking at a hospital CT scanner, and is that a Buddhist statue lying inside? It may look surprising, but that's exactly what's happening at the National Museum of Korea. A newly introduced giant cylindrical CT scanner allows experts to look inside priceless cultural artifacts without damaging them. Large wooden Buddhist statues and other valuable treasures are carefully scanned, revealing their internal structure, construction techniques, and even hidden signs of deterioration. The scanner is large enough to examine artifacts up to 3 meters long, opening up new possibilities for studying Korea's biggest cultural treasures. By combining cutting-edge technology with cultural heritage preservation, the museum hopes to advance research, conservation, and even visitor restoration, helping preserve Korea's invaluable heritage for future generations. is she looking into thin air? And what's that headset she's wearing? She may seem lost in another world, but she's actually experiencing media art through an extended reality headsets. She's not the only one. More and more visitors are putting on headsets to experience art into a whole new way. Instead of simply looking at a screen or a painting, they can step inside immersive digital worlds that blend art with technology, making every visit feel more interactive, engaging, and unforgettable. From walking through fields of flowers to diving beneath the ocean, exploring historical landmarks, or even watching a giant whale glide across the moon, every experience feels as if you've become part of the artwork itself. Media art is becoming part of everyday life. In fact, following Constitution Day on July 17th, a large digital display at Seoul's Gwanghwamun Square showcased media art inspired by Korea's Constitution, proving that technology is giving even national history and civic values a fresh new canvas. Look at this dolphin in a rescue net. This is 안목이, a bottlenose dolphin that had been living alone off Gangneung's coast for more than 10 months. After months of careful planning and patiently waiting for the right opportunity, rescue teams finally began their mission. They slowly surrounded 안목이 with nets, taking every precaution to keep the dolphin safe and calm. Divers worked side by side with 안목이, gently guiding the dolphin toward a secure rescue area. Rather than rushing, they moved patiently and carefully, making sure the dolphin stayed as relaxed and stress-free as possible throughout the operation. And it was a rescue that required teamwork, precision, and a great deal of patience. Finally, 안목이 was safely lifted onto a stretcher, examined by experts, and transported for further care. The successful rescue brought relief to everyone who had followed the dolphin's story, serving as a heartwarming reminder of Korea's ongoing efforts to protect its marine wildlife. Every story, whether old or new, helps shape Korea's unique cultural landscape.
The 48th session of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee officially began in Busan on Sunday. Now today, we'll take a closer look at the shared values and cultural significance behind Korea's World Heritage sites, from Seokguram Grotto to the royal tombs of the Joseon dynasty. And we're going to do that with David Tizard, Professor of Korean Studies at Seoul Women's University and Hanyang University. Professor Tizard, welcome back to the studio.
Hello, Professor.
Hello, thanks for having me back. It's wonderful to be here.
We're delighted to have you here. And Professor Tizard, let's talk about the UNESCO World Heritage Committee, which kicked off in Busan. And naturally, there's growing interest in Korea's own World Heritage sites. But how much do you think actually are international people familiar with those heritage sites?
How much are they familiar with the heritage sites is a difficult question, because it's not only international people but also Korean people who over the last few decades have been rediscovering their own heritage. Now, just before we started, you guys were talking about Psy's Gangnam Style passing 6 billion views on YouTube, becoming the first one to do that. I think that's something very important to recognize, because UNESCO has come here for the first time, haven't they? We now have 17, I think, Korean UNESCO heritages that have been labeled. This is wonderful for the country, because you go back a few decades, and if you said Korea to people, they might immediately think of North Korea. That was the word that was synonymous with it. And if you thought of K, you thought of kangaroos and koalas. Now, in 2026, if you say Korea, you think of the things that are associated with South Korea. And whether that's K-pop, whether that's beauty, mountains, temples, whatever it might be, that's really good for this nation and the people here. And also the letter K, just the letter K, it comes to this nation. So putting it in that perspective, the fact that UNESCO is here, the fact that people are talking about remembering Korean heritage in this way, I think it's really important, and it's very moving, I think, that Korea is going through this process now.
I like the fact that you mentioned that Koreans are actually rediscovering the heritages themselves, and I guess we are proud that K-pop is expanding around the world, but yes, having this event here in Korea put some spotlight on K-heritage, if we can name it that way.
And especially also with a lot of historical movies coming out, also recognizing, you know, a lot of history behind Korea, I think has gotten a lot of Koreans to look into their history of, you know, what Korea is doing. But you have yourself lived in Korea for quite some time, and you've studied, I'm sure, massive amounts of work of Korea over the many years. Now, with your travel experience of where you've gone and what you've experienced, compared with other World Heritage sites in other countries, do you think there is a defining characteristic of Korea's World Heritage sites?
That's a very difficult thing because UNESCO wants all of its heritage sites to be universal. So the idea is that anybody, whether they're from Argentina or Afghanistan or Armenia, they can go there and immediately understand, that's what it is. That's what this is. So there is a universal nature, but for me personally, having been here for 21 years, when I first started visiting the temples and places like this, and sometimes they're a journey because they're located out in the mountains. You have to get there. And when you finally get there, first for me, I was like, okay, so this is it. This is the thing that we traveled all this way for, because I was coming from Western Europe. I was coming through these grand palaces and museums that would rise up into the heavens where they were a monument to sort of a Western monotheistic Christian God. And then I came here where the foundations and the values are all completely different, influenced by Buddhism and Confucianism, Taoism and shamanism. And you come to a temple and you realize it's not meant to rise up into heavens. It's meant to seep into nature. It's meant to become one with the mountains and the stream and the sky and the animals around it. So it's creating that unity, which is a sign of humility. And you see that in the colors as well that line the buildings and the temples. And, you know, it's often said that you can be 5 meters away from a Korean temple and you might not see it because it's that sort of delved into nature. So it actually, I think it takes a rewiring of the brain if you come from certain parts of the world to really understand the Korean aesthetic. I'm not saying it's difficult, but I think having that knowledge really helps you appreciate what you're seeing that can otherwise be missed by people. And that's where curation and information, not just people going to these sites, but understanding the values that underpin them, can really elevate them even more in our aesthetic judgments.
Right. That's very interesting and something that we should know before we, maybe also introduce Korea's World Heritages to foreigners. But Professor Tizard, Korea's World Heritage includes, as you mentioned, Buddhist sites such as Seokguram Grotto and the Sansa mountain monasteries, as well as Confucian heritages. So do you think that this coexistence of these different traditions is one of the features that defines Korean culture?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In the West, we often think of religions as something you believe or you don't. So you're a member of this religion or you're not a member of this religion. Now, here in East Asia, these things that we're talking about, very difficult concepts, but Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, these are not religions. That's a very Western way to see it. Here they're known as do or gyo, which is a path or a school. And they're kind of syncretic, so they can all mix at the same time. There's this very famous expression that Koreans are Confucian by day, Taoist at night, and they go to temple when they've got a problem or one of their kids is going to high school. And so they all exist simultaneously. They're not exclusive. And if you go to these temples and you see people there, you ask them, are you a Buddhist? And they'll say, no, I just came here because it's nice, it makes me calm, I want to take some photos or something like that. So I think understanding these things as paths, as ways, rather than religions, which is what some people are prone to do, I think that helps it. There's a very famous photo, I'll be quick with this. It's called the Free Vinegar Tasters. And you have Buddha, Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, and Confucius standing around a pot of vinegar. And they're all tasting the vinegar, and they all have different expressions on their face, which depicts their world views. The point is, they're all drinking from the same pot. When you hear about these words of Confucius, Buddhist and Taoist, they sound different, but they all exist simultaneously and they're all reflections of the same thing, really. So, yeah, understanding them helps you understand what's underpinning everything here.
That's I'm going to look up that photo once this finishes. That sounds very quite fascinating. But to sort of back end of what you were talking about, another striking aspect is that Korea's tradition of honoring ancestors and emphasizing ritual propriety, and it being has been recognized through the World Heritage as well. So why do you think these traditions have been more recognized as having outstanding universal value?
Because it's memory and it's heritage, and to know where we're going in this world with AI, and does anybody have a vision of the future anymore? What's going to come? Nobody really knows. We used to imagine the future, and we would build the future, and we would have this. But if you ask young people today to imagine the future, it's a little bit more difficult. It's just like this, but with more AI. And so the past is becoming more important, and how we respond to the past and how we curate and how we remember it is really a thing. And what I want to say is, just so it doesn't get lost, is South Korea's interest in its own past, its own memory and heritage rises in correlation with its economic development. One of my favorite photos, if you're into photos, to show students is a photo of Gwanghwamun in 1961, which is a landmark place today. It's where everything happens. But in 1961, there was no statue of Admiral Lee Sun-shin. You couldn't see Sejong-daewang, obviously, King Sejong the Great. You couldn't even see Gyeongbokgung Palace. That was kind of invisible until the 1990s, and that's just mind-blowing to think of today, because it appears on all the paraphernalia around Korea, And so as Korea has become richer, more modern, more developed, it's found the confidence now to explore its past. And so the more a nation modernizes and reaches into the future, it also wants to understand its past. And as we get older, we sometimes think about our past, think about our parents, our grandparents. So I think Korea's fascination with the past is a sign of its modernizing and futuristic success as well. And that's a good thing, because imagine a Korea without Gyeongbokgung, and that was a reality until rather recently.
Now, while some of the cultural sites in Korea are in the middle of the city, others, many of them are in the mountains, the kinds that we like to conquer. So let's talk about those temples, especially in the mountains. How do they compare to those in other countries?
I was actually just out there this morning. That's where I've driven to you from today, from Gangwon-do, and 70% of Korea is mountains. One of my favorite Korean expressions is san nomo san. Over the mountains, there are mountains. And in this country, the temples are located in mountains. Important sites are located in the countryside. Now, South Koreans traditionally, they believe that the spirits live in the mountains. They would call these sanshin, right? Mountain gods. And this is where the first ever Korean, Dangun, he went into the mountains to become a mountain god. So mountains are places of great spirituality. In other traditions or cultures, we might go into churches or cathedrals, into mosques or synagogues. But here in Korea, the mountains were a place of great spirituality, and they would be associated with fertility rites. People would go up to mountains and ask for help making sons or daughters, or all of these kind of things. So placing temples and sites of importance around mountains points to just the spiritual place that mountains serve in traditional Korean life. So yeah, for anybody coming to Korea, whenever you get the chance, go out into the mountains, because the weirdest thing for me is you can't photograph them well, or at least I can't, because I find them so breathtaking, and I look at them and I get out my phone to take a photo, and I look at the photo, I was like, no, that's not it. And that's the best thing about them. They're indescribable through photos normally.
Right, I really have to relate with you on that experience.
Well, let's continue with this sort of documentation of Korea's history and the World Heritage as well, because Korea is also home to a number of documented heritage items recognized internationally. As you said, like Gyeongbokgung is basically the face in some ways for many tourists. How do you think Korea's long tradition of valuing records and documentations continue to, shape the new Korean society?
It's fascinating that we have the past. I mean, we can make friends with people that lived 500 years ago. Just yesterday, my friend Kang Min-soo, who's a professor of history, he shared a story online of Joseon literature that was written about feminist at that time, and it's amazing that we have these records, that we have these books, we have these artifacts that we can find and delve into them. That's really good. I have to say something about UNESCO here, because UNESCO is a global international body, and while they are now designating things as heritage sites, that means they can't be changed. That means if anybody wants to develop things in the area, you're beholden not to national politics or the needs and requirements of the people that live in those areas. However, you're beholden to people that live in offices, bureaucracies many miles away. And Liverpool was actually taken off the UNESCO heritage sites in a few years ago, maybe 2021, because they wanted to redevelop the waterfront. And it was a UNESCO site. They said no. Liverpool did it anyway, and it was removed. So there is this idea of records and who gets to write the records and who qualifies these things. And UNESCO has sort of taken that power, and it would be nice for Korea to sometimes think, we don't need a UNESCO designation to say this is important, because it's important to us, and we should maintain the narrative and control over what we deem important rather than always an international body.
That is an interesting aspect, Professor Chizard. Now, before we let you go, just finally, very briefly, if there would be one Korean World Heritage site that you would recommend to international visitors, what would that be?
Can I annoy you by saying don't go to one? Because everybody else is going to go to them, and you want something curated, you want something unique. So go to all the little villages around the UNESCO sites, go in, order a bowl of noodles from the ajima, and then you get something that nobody else got. So that's my answer.
Great recommendation, Professor Tizard. And thank you so much for your insights, as always. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
And thank you, Walter. As always, we're going to see you back here later this week.
See you later.
Thanks for watching and your interest in everything K-culture. Please tune in again tomorrow, 2 p.m. Korea time. Keep diving.